This evening, England take on Japan, which is a game that I'm actually relatively nervous for. I believe people are completely writing Japan off and give them very little chance. Now, I think the reason for this is England showed sort of a good performance, good defensive display against Argentina, and obviously kicked the 3 points to sort of stretch a rather considerable lead. Now, look, considering England won and won well, they still showed massive problems in their attack. So if this game does become open and expansive, look, it could play into England's hands, but also it leaves the door wide open for Japan to score a few, which could really pile the pressure on England. Now look, I'm just going to run through the lineups. Joe Marler comes in for Ellis Genge. Now, obviously Ellis Genge can't play every single minute of every single game, so look, a little bit of rotation there gives Joe Marler the opportunity to impress. Look, he'll be good in the scrums, I'm sure, and defensively he'll be strong. However, going forward in attack, he doesn't offer an awful lot. Jamie George at hooker. Look, it's imperative for England that Jamie George stays fit. Really important, and he's the only English international level hooker. So look, very important he stays fit. Sinclair comes in for Dan Cole. Look, I was a little bit surprised with the inclusion of Dan Cole starting last week, but I thought it worked quite nicely. Scrums were solid, so that was good. I still think Sinclair and Stewart are the sort of two primary tight heads. But yeah, Sinclair gets his opportunity, and I think Stewart will come on relatively early in the second half. Toji Chesham continue in the second row, and then in the back row we've got Laws, Earl, and Ludlam. Now look, I think it's quite a nice balance in that back row. Not the biggest back row. If you were to come up against one of the sort of top 5 teams, you'd definitely struggle with not having sort of that big of a ball carrier in there. Laws being a second row by trade, moving into 6, you do limit your sort of bulk and size. But look, Laws has been England's best player, I'd say, so far. Brilliant over the ball and great in the lineouts. Also, Bennell has impressed of late. Real ball of energy, tenacious, a lot of sort of involvements in a game. So look, I've been impressed with Bennell, but he hasn't massively shown his sort of form from Saracens in terms of his ball carrying. He's been great in defence, but I'd like to see him try and transfer his ball carrying to the international level. Ludlam. Now Ludlam is a player in which I really do like. He's a fan favourite, I think, in terms of the way he plays. I think he's very sort of rugged. He's not the sort of smooth player. He's got a lot of rough edges, but it makes him really good to watch. When he gets that ball, he has a massive sort of will and determination and grit to break tackles, and defensively he has that same edge also. So look, it'll be interesting to see how Ludlam gets on with Billy V being relegated to the bench. Now look, Billy can't necessarily start straight away after a lengthy ban. Look, integrate him slowly and then see if he can pick up some form. Into the back line, Mitchell and Ford start at 9 and 10. Now look, I think Mitchell has gone from the 4th choice scrum half in English rugby to the 1st in a matter of 2 weeks. Look, it's surprising that Borthwick left him out of the initial squad. I think every England fan was just so frustrated. But look, Borthwick has amended his selection based upon a sort of very unfortunate injury to Jack Van Portfleet. George Ford continues at 10. The drop goal phenomenon. Look, I'll be surprised if he doesn't hit a couple in this game also. When the opportunity presents itself, he's been really, really clinical. And look, to have 100% success rate from drop goals in the last match, considering 2 of them were behind the 10-metre line and 1 was on the halfway line, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So look, I'll be interested to see how Ford can sort of add to his game, not necessarily with the drop goals, add to his attacking game to really try and light up the field, because you can't go to the World Cup final or anywhere near a World Cup final if you can't score a try, especially when you're playing South Africa, Ireland, France, New Zealand, all these big nations. In the centres, I think this is once again the favoured combination, Tuolangi and Marchant. I don't think they've been complementing each other massively of late. Defensively, I think they're solid. I think, look, Tuolangi can really put in a big hit, and Marchant is really good at that sort of edge cover defence, where there's been sort of an arcing run, and he manages to cover across and make a sort of a passive tackle. So look, decent sort of balance between the centres defensively. Offensively, we haven't seen an awful lot. Potentially that was because we were down to 14 men. So look, be interesting to see how England can play with a full complement, hopefully for the whole game. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they get on. Into the back 3, Daly, May and Stewart. I'm not overly convinced about Daly on the wing. I believe we have sort of better finishers in the English squad. Also outside the English squad with the likes of sort of Murley, But look, Daly gets in there. He's obviously got that big left boot, another kicking option. He did struggle off the tee from range against Argentina. A couple of his kicks pushed to the left, sort of sliced them slightly. So hopefully they don't sort of go away from Daly in that aspect, and hopefully he can sort of get his confidence back with that long range kicking, because it can be an absolute weapon later on in the tournament. Now Johnny May on the other wing. Once again, May wasn't even in the initial World Cup squad, and then they've sort of been promoted to the first choice wing. I don't really understand how that happens, but it does. So May continues on the wing, and then Stewart at fullback, providing a safe pair of hands and good ball carrying going forward, especially like around the rucks. If you're 5 metres out, Stewart's like having another second row. So look, he's invaluable in that aspect. Now, just a couple of pointers in terms of what we can expect from the match. I think the speed of ball will be so key for Japan. The quicker they can keep the pace of the game, the more likely they'll be to pick on the likes of a Marler and a Sinclair to get a little line break. Set pieces can be pivotal for England. Really try and maul Japan to death. Mauls, scrums, penalties. These are the sort of things in which England will have to sort of create positive compounds and really punish the Japanese. Looking into the English bench, Theo Dan is the replacement for Jamie George, the Saracens combination there. Theo Dan has sort of jumped past Jack Walker in that respect too. Jack Walker could probably expect a game or two later on in the group stages, but for now it'll be George and Dan. Genge and Stewart are the replacement props, as I've mentioned. George Martin is the replacement second row, probably going to come on for Ollie Chesham, probably in the 60 to 70 minute mark. Billy V, as mentioned, comes in off of the bench. Hopefully he can sort of find his form of sort of a few years ago. He did rip up the Premiership in the last, the 2022 season. He had a phenomenal final against Leicester despite losing. So look, if Billy V can find that form again, he'll be huge for this team. And then in terms of the backs, Ben Youngs is the replacement scrum half. Doesn't add a lot of pace to the game, but look, if England establish an early lead, his box kicking could help see out a tight contest. And then Marcus Smith is the game-changing fly half. If you need a spark, some energy, bring him on. Even at fullback, he can add something. So look, Marcus Smith is the player to really add a bit of tempo to the game. And then Ollie Lawrence is the sort of replacement outside back, who can, I suppose, fill in on wing or centre, obviously preferably centre, who can also be dangerous. Now, in terms of what the previous score was between these two sides, they met in November 2022, I believe, and England won 52 points to 13. Now, look, I don't believe that'll be the case this time. I don't think it'll even be close to that score this time. A lot tighter contest. That was obviously under the sort of overseen by Eddie Jones, being the head coach at that time. Steve Borthwick has brought in a completely new strategy, in which seems to be a lot more rigid, a lot more sort of set piece based. So I can imagine England scoring a few less points, but in terms of what the bookies feel, they have England to win by 20. I'm not sure I agree with that. I believe England could pull away at some points, but when you're struggling to score tries, it's going to be quite hard to pull away. Look, I do think England will win. I think between sort of 8 to 15 points, something in that range, just out of sort of the one try limit. So look, I think it'll be a real good contest, and the Japanese are very dangerous. Now, on that Japanese side, the main threat, Himeno, comes in, a very, very good ball carrier, probably the best Japanese player on the field. Look, he's industrious with his carries, and look, against that England back row, I think he's probably bigger than all of them, so he'll have a massive impact and a massive role for Japan to get them on the front foot. Michael Leach, the famous Japanese captain. I was lucky enough to go to Japan in the 2019 World Cup, and look, the name that they all knew from the Japanese side was Leach. Look, he's quite an inspirational leader for that Japanese side, and I believe they had a statue of him in Japan. So look, he's obviously well respected within that side, and if they were to go on to win this game, it'll be down to his leadership to sort of guide a relatively young team. Matsushima on the wing will be lethal for Japan. Amazing footwork, brilliant in the air, and look, I think he's like 70 kilos, so for such a small, lightweight winger, he's unbelievable. And then on the bench for Japan, they have Dylan Riley, who is one of their more experienced players, and in the centres he can definitely add something if they need to tighten up defensively, or sort of look and push for some tries in attack. So look, that is the two teams, and look, that's the England lineup for the game. I believe it will be a relatively close encounter. England, I think, will prevail. Let me know your thoughts on the contest, who will win and by what margin, and do you give Japan a good chance? Because personally, I do give Japan a good chance. But yeah, we'll reflect upon this game afterwards. But thank you very much for watching.